Hello world, this is Petros Catholic here coming from the third part. We're almost done, home stretch. The third particular messianic prophecy was, and that was one of the, and I'll spend a little time talking about that today. Just please, just bear with me now. The third one was that the Messiah was to defend, battle, and defeat the enemies of Israel. Okay, defend, battle, and defeat the enemies of Israel. People saw the Messiah, and again, I'm asking you guys just to give me some time for this video, and because I really want to dig deep into this particular video here. The Messiah was portrayed as a new David. A David because, and the history of the Israelites, their high point, their climax was the Davidic reign. More particularly, David and Solomon. During the reign of David and Solomon, the Israelites went through a bursting expansion, a bursting period of prosperity. Not peace, we wouldn't say peace because they had a couple of wars, but of prosperity. We would call it the golden age of Israel. So people had that in their mind, that the new Messiah, the Messiah that would come in to redeem them, would be a new David, a warrior, someone who would come and fight. He would fight and defeat every single one of his foes and give glory to God and to Israel. Right? So we have the, and the Messiah that would come would have the wisdom of Solomon. He would have the knowledge of Solomon in order to gather everyone and keep everyone in peace and prosperity and expand their nation even further. Right? Now we all know, if you read your Bible, that Solomon and David, even though they had this good amount of expansion and wealth and prosperity, they had, I wouldn't say a proportional, but close to that, of shortcomings. David was an adulterer and a murderer. He killed one of his generals because he slept with his wife and sent the general to die in the front lines. Solomon, in order to keep his father's empire happy and expand it more, he had another tactic. He would marry the daughter of a nearby empire or a nearby country, and the marriage would ensure alliance with that particular country. So we see that those guys, even though they had expanded the empire, they also had shortcomings. So people saw the Messiah as someone who wouldn't have any blemish, who wouldn't have any shortcoming at all. Now, what do we see in Jesus? If we look at the Gospel of Luke, the Gospel of Luke would give us a very nice insight on this. The Gospel of Luke, Luke starts his Gospel, because Luke was by anything else, he was an historian. So he would pinpoint places in history and tie it up with what was happening in the Jewish history as well. So, and if you read the Gospel, the narrative, the nativity story of Luke, Luke starts something like this. And during the reign of Tiberius, under the reign of a particular Jewish king, so he would point out some key figures in history, set them on the stage, and immediately remove the spotlight from them and shift it to a little baby boy in Bethlehem. Now, very interesting. You take those two kings, the emperor of Rome, the king of Judea, or the king of Israel. Right? Essentially, what Luke is showing us here is not just a fairy tale, oh, nice lovey-dovey story, the nativity, Jesus coming down in manger, wrapping him up, the angels sing, glory, glory, hallelujah. No. Luke is showing us that Since the beginning, Jesus came as a warrior. Jesus did not just come as a peaceful little baby. He came as a warrior. Why? Warrior, emperors or kings, they have a certain amount of stuff in common. One, their royal subjects. Two, their wealth, their particular wealth and authority. And three, I would say we would switch the order. One, their authority, their supremacy. Two, their royal subjects. And three, their army. What does Luke do? Luke sets those three people up and parallel, like face to face. In one hand, you have the power of Caesar, who would crush anyone who comes in his way. The sheer power of Caesar. And here, you have a power of a little baby boy who, govern the stars in the sky. So much so that a particular star pinpoint his arrival. So you see the sheer power of authority and authority of that child. The loyal subjects. The loyal subject of the emperors and the kings were people around them, their councils. Who were the loyal subjects of that little baby boy? Shepherds, animals, to the point where you had kings who came in the picture. Now here's the nice point here. Rome was most famous for his army. His army that could crush anybody that opposed them, just sweep them off. The Israelites also were recognized for their army at one point because of their military power around that region. Not so much today. Well, not so much during Jesus' time. And you see just baby boy. What happens is when the baby boy is born, the angels goes to the shepherd. And after the angel proclaims to the shepherds now see a army of angels. And the Greek word I believe for that is stratias. Stratias is where we have our word strategic, strategy, using strategic means. So we have the stratias, an army of angels. So you have these two people that are opposed. And so much so that Herod knows this, to the point where when he hears news of that baby boy, that baby king, he goes out and wants to kill him. Right? So we see those people being threatened by that baby boy's supremacy. He's a king. Now we fast forward during his lifetime. When we look at the crucifixion and the passion, if any one of you has ever had the guts to watch the Passion of Christ, I want you to watch it. Aside from the horrific accuracy, and I call it horrific accuracy because it is accurate, because those guys, that's how they brutalized people back then. But if you look at the context of which Mel Gibson puts in that movie, from the garden all the way up to the cross, from the garden you have every imaginable fallacy in the spiritual world attacking Jesus. Every spiritual fallacy, every spiritual, every demon or devil or whatever you want to call them, they went on full assault on Jesus that day. And when you think of full assault, when it was a war, it was a war. Aside from the horrific crucifixion, the way they beat him, but let's leave the physical realm for a second and let's move to the spiritual realm. From the garden, we see Jesus struggling to the point where an angel from heaven came down and gave him courage. Because he was in a war, he understood what he was going to go. Aside from the physical agony, he went through a spiritual warfare that day, where every bad aspect of either the human being or the spiritual world came out to meet him. He was betrayed, abandoned, brutalized, beaten, mocked at, spit on, punched at, laughed at, humiliated, dehumanized. Every single thing that could have happened wrong that day happened. He was betrayed by the people who loved him. He was denied by the one who he appointed as the head of the church. He was abandoned by people he loved. He was everything. And the greatest weapon that Jesus used during that day was nonviolence. To the point where he mimicked at them their own injustice to him. That was the weapon of the Messiah. The Messiah was not to come as a new David to use the sword and the army, whatever. He used the arm or the weapon of nonviolence. There is a particular, I believe, a particular martial arts called Aikido, I think, where the whole purpose of that martial arts is to use your own strength against you. You throw a punch, they use that same force that you throw the punch and use it to disarm you. To the point where the more you struggle, the more you fight, the weaker you become because you're fighting against your own strength. That person is mimicking or just reflecting your own strength. It's using it against you. It's exactly what Jesus did. Jesus, during that day, got all of those forces. He absorbed them and used it against them. When they would mock him, he would respond in love. He would respond in compassion. Just spitting out what they just shoved in his throat. He would use that method of nonviolence against them. And that was the greatest victory of the human race because of the Messiah. That was the greatest history. That was the greatest victory of the Messiah. He was able to take all of the particular powers, the Roman authority of the day, the Jewish corruption, and the spiritual world, and attack them from all. He was able to defend, battle, and defeat them from all angles. He defeated the Roman authority by assuming his kingship and declaring that he is king and not bowing down to them. He defeated the Jewish corruption by upholding the law, the true meaning of the law and the heart of the law to the human and fulfilling it in himself on the cross. He defeated the spiritual realm by not using fire with fire, but by using his divine, his divine power and his humanity, and letting them attacking, but reflecting that particular corruption or that particular demonic activity and reflecting it towards them. And by that was the greatest victory of the Messiah. This is how Jesus fought the fight that we would not have been able to fight it. He fought it on his own way. He fought it not by going to the enemy's ground, but he found it on his ground, and he won. And that's why when the disciples went out to preach the good news, they would preach the good news of a crucified Christ who was risen. Not someone who just got a lightning from heaven and just struck lightning on his enemies, but he allowed his enemies to throw everything they had at him. And he reflected the same thing back at them, but with love and compassion. So that was, again, the greatest weapon that Jesus has, and that is the greatest weapon that we have. If you look at how Christianity became what it became, and the initial steps, it was not through, It was not through violence or anything. It was through non-violence. Christians were being persecuted. They were being martyred. They were dying. But they decided to respond through non-violence. And non-violence always wins. No matter what anybody says. It always wins. Period. So that was, and I could go on and on, but I'll just stop it right there because I know it will be a little long, very long video. So that was what I had about the third dimension of the Messianic prophecy that I'll be speaking about how Jesus uses it and fulfills it. Okay, so that's what I had. If you guys have any comment, questions, or concerns below, please put them below, and we'll speak on it a little bit more. Thank you very much for watching. God love you. I love you. We love you. And be saints. Pleasure signing out. Have a good night.